Everyone, thank you for tuning in for another episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. We are a weekly podcast dedicated to sincere, in-depth investigations into the paranormal, supernatural, and the metaphysical, with a special focus on the UFO topic. We take a sincere, analytical approach, thoroughly evaluating each case and its implications. Our discussions go beyond the surface as we engage with researchers, investigators, and experiencers to explore the deeper layers of their testimonies. We strive for high-resolution analysis, carefully examining evidence, patterns, and perspectives that challenge conventional thinking. If you're looking for a podcast that seeks deeper understanding, you're in the right place. Please be sure to like and subscribe and follow to receive notifications when new content is made available. You can also visit us at www.paranomalypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. Thank you again for watching or listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in with us tonight. We have a great show. We have Robert Earl White up on here with us. Robert has a very interesting story, and I wanted to have him tell us about this story to get your perspectives. So Jim and I talked, and we was like, hey, let's get Robert on and talk about his experience, because I watched the whole playlist and was like, wow, this is incredible, and we want to find out more about this. So Robert, thank you so much for coming on with us tonight. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are.
Thank you. Well, my name is Robert Earl White. I have the Order of Light, Project Horizon. I'm the assistant director with my colleague Anthony Essenplayer, where we are triangulating and collecting data and information on UAPs, UFOs, and other strange anomalies. I was born and raised here in South Jersey in a small town called Lower Alloways Creek, not far from the Hope Creek nuclear plant. Throughout the years, I went to Bible college. I became an ordained pastor. I was a youth minister. After Bible college, I was in a very successful Christian heavy metal band. We got signed, toured around the country, CD in stores. After the band, I actually ended up moving to Turkey, Samsun, Turkey, for 2 years. And I was a teacher over there on the Black Sea from 2013 to 2015, studying some of the craziest ancient history you could possibly imagine, including going to Göbekli Tepe and many other ancient sites that the world still don't know about because they're still buried there. Very old place, and it was truly amazing to be over there in Mesopotamia and just learning that culture, and I had an amazing time. I came back to the States. I became a warehouse manager for a commercial door and frame company. This is how life goes, boys. I'm sure you know it. Chat, our lives, the things we go back and forth from. And then approximately 4 years ago, I finally came across evidence that I have been searching for the past 30 years, because in 1991, my family had a really interesting experience, we could say, in this small town in South Jersey. It's nothing like North Jersey, okay? People refer to where I live as pretty much the Alabama of New Jersey. The town I grew up in is famous for muskrat hunting. We eat muskrat. All right. So if you've ever ate muskrat, you know what kind of area I'm living in, and it's not the Jersey Shore or New York City or anything like that. There's nothing around, no major highways. It's a dead zone. I don't get service. I wouldn't be able to do anything without Wi-Fi. So to give you an idea of this area of Lower Alloways Creek. So the story most of you probably want to hear is known as the Lower Alloways Creek Incident. On April 21st, 1991 at 10:18 p.m. on a Sunday night, my mom was home with two of her friends. They were watching a Phillies baseball game. We lived out in the middle of nowheres, and directly behind our house, there was a very thin, small tree line. Directly beyond that tree line, there was the Lower Alloways Creek. Now, this creek was directly connected to the Hope Creek power plant. This was the same water that the nuclear plant was operating off of. The nuclear plant was 2.3 miles away from where this incident happened and where we lived. And
That's really close.
also behind our house, there was a road. And to the left, it was nothing but marshland, foxtails, a lot of mud, little creek beds, looks like veins and roots going all through the marshland, huge foxtails, no street lights. And on the road, there was an old bridge with wood and tar on it, one car at a time. And that went right over this little creek. The creek is about 25 to 30 feet wide, just to give all the viewers an understanding. So my family's house and my aunt, who lived directly next door to us. So our houses, in the back of our houses, there was the tree line, and then there was the creek and the bridge, and then a lot of marshland, just to kind of give you the idea. So at 10:18 p.m. on April 21st, my aunt was next door getting ready for bed. Her bedroom was in the top part of her house, and she was going into the bathroom before going to sleep, just getting ready, and she peeked out her back window. It's also important to say this. After obtaining weather reports from the FAA and other local airports, it was raining the night of this incident, and cloud coverage was 1,200 foot. So right off the bat, that should give you an idea of how high this could have possibly been or how low, but it was fairly low. So my aunt, she looks out her back window from her second story of her house, and above the tree line and looking at it on about a 45-degree angle, she noticed a very elongated, thin, black, triangular craft sitting there, absolutely silent and not moving an centimeter at all, not moving an inch, nothing, like eerily still, like impossible still.
When you say elongated, now is that contrary to like the typical image of a TR3B, which is equilateral?
Yeah, a TR3B is a perfect triangle. Ours was more the length of a spade. What's up, Kurt? How's it? That's my boy, Kurt. It was more of like a spade. And the reason we knew it was triangular was because on the tips of them, the back two were very close together, and the other one was in the front. There was three blue lights. And in the center of it, there was this very bright, super white, plasma-ish, blinding white light, almost like you could barely even see anything because the light was so blinding coming from the center of it.
So that's consistent with the TR3B, that configuration.
The center light. Yeah.
And lights on the tips as well.
Yeah, but the craft, it was the length of a very large military helicopter, But this craft, it was sitting so still. And, even with helicopters, there's the leaf effect that even when something is staying still, I know with some of the higher end drones, they can really hold them still now. But back in 1991, it really wasn't a thing. And this thing was massive. And I would say from how we were looking at it, imagine like a couple telephone poles above the tree line. That was about the height of the craft, and how it was so thin. It wasn't a perfect triangle. It was very long and thin, and the material, it was not shiny. It looked like I explain it as like a black meteorite, like that organic material. You know what I mean? Like if you like a space rock.
Like matte black, maybe, or
yeah, and you could kind of see from, because it was raining, and the blue lights on the tips, that was glowing some of the material, because the center, the white, that was blinding. You really couldn't see anything around the center because it was so blinding. But on the tips of the craft, where the blue lights, blue is a lot dimmer and visually easier to focus on, but you could see the blue lights illuminating some of this craft to be able to see the, with it being wet from the rain and the glistening, you could kind of tell it looked like a rocky material. It wasn't super smooth. It really seemed like a black meteorite. It kind of was porpoisey. It wasn't perfect.
Right, and if it was shiny or metallic in texture, then the lights shining would have had an effect on that, which would have been noticeable.
Yeah.
It would have reflected, the light in a certain way.
That's a good point. It would have made almost like another light come off of it, but that's a good example. If you took a I've never thought about it that way. If you took a flashlight and you shined it on, say, a wall with gloss paint, or a car with glossy paint, and you see the light reflecting off of it, then you take a flashlight and shine it on a rock. It was the rock. That's brilliant. Oh, man. Great insight, man. I've never thought about that, So my aunt, she's seeing. Do you got a question, Todd?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, take us back real quick. How old was you when this was happening?
I was 3.5 years old. My mother was 22 years old. My mother was a single mom, and I was 3.5 years old.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I wasn't sure. I don't remember if you said it. So.
And I did witness this, and I'll get to it eventually. So to go back, not to get too far ahead of myself. So my aunt, she's using the bathroom. She looks out. She sees this thing sitting there, absolutely, completely silent, not moving an inch. 3 blue lights on the tips of it, and this crazy white light in the center. And she's saying to herself, what is this? Wonder what this could be. Let me give Beth Ann, my mother, a call that was next door watching a baseball game with 2 of her friends downstairs. At the time, it was 10:18 at night. I'm 3.5 years old. Where would I be? I was in bed, of course. I was a little kid. My mom was still a mom, What 3.5-year-old would be up that late? But my bed was towards the back of the house, and I'll get to that in a second. So my mom hears the kitchen phone ringing, and it was my aunt calling her next door. So my mom walks out to the back of the kitchen, and our kitchen was in the back of our house, pointing towards the same tree line, pointing towards the same bridge and the same creek. My mom picks up the phone and she says, hello. My aunt says, Beth Ann, look out the window. There's something. And it's just hovering there. So my mom on the phone, she looks out the window, and my mom starts screaming, oh my God, what is that? Like really loud, like
so it was ominous. It must have been kind of ominous in appearance, I guess, for her to kind of have a reaction like that. Like it clearly didn't look like anything conventional, to make her sort of react that way.
And to be fair, I like to look at things logically, okay? When you're seeing something and it's raining and cloudy that late at night, and it's off at a 45 with that center blinding light like that, like I've seen helicopters and things of that nature with their spotlights on, and when they're on you, you don't know what's coming towards you. But this thing, luckily, it wasn't a spot on. We were looking at it at a side profile. which was useful. The spotlight wasn't shining. I wouldn't even call it a spotlight. It was just it seemed like it was luminous all over. It was just very, very plasma-ish, which at that time I didn't know what plasma was. I didn't know what plasma was until I got into fabrication and like seeing that, stuff like that, plasma torches.
Plasma, to use an analogy, it behaves similarly to like the sun. How if you zoom in on the sun,
It moves.
there's
It's
activity.
alive. Yeah, it's alive. It looks alive. It's not like a spotlight or a car light. It's ever shifting. Sometimes this little spot will be out a little bit. It's almost like it's alive. So yeah, my mother, she sees this. She's screaming at the top of her lungs. At this point, her two friends that were sitting on the couch, they hear my mom freaking out. And like you said, just that reaction is obviously something, that. And a little side note, just a fun fact. Since 1977, no fly zone near nuclear plants within 10 nautical miles since 1977. And that's when this nuclear plant was built. And my house was 2.5, 2.6 at most miles away from the nuclear plant. So what could have been that low hovering there on the same creek connected to the nuclear plant when it's a no-fly zone? And better yet, what would be allowed to explode that close to a nuclear plant?
Right. To me, that's
Makes
a
you
very
wonder.
that's a very important fact.
But I skipped ahead a little bit. I gave a little spoiler alert there. So,
okay.
My mom's two friends, they were younger, slightly older than her. One was 28 and the other one was like 34, I believe. So they were slightly older local folks. And they get up and they start screaming like young women would do. What is it? What is it? What is it? And they're physically running. At that time, I was upstairs. I heard the commotion and my bed was underneath of the back window. And once I heard the commotion, I heard the footsteps and everyone running towards the back of the house and screaming, what is it? What is it? And I'm 6'8". I'm a really tall guy. So when I was a little kid, I was a lot taller than the average kid, but my bed was high. So if I stood on top of my bed, I could see out the window. And at that moment, that's when I laid eyes on this. Except at 3.5 years old, I had no idea what I was looking at. I at that point, I don't even know if I've seen planes before at that age.
Right.
Not in real life,
That's just barely, into the stage where you start to think
comprehension.
conceptually about anything. You don't know that many concepts at
Yeah.
all, let
I
alone
was
aircraft.
talking. I liked movies. I played video games with my grandfather. I was raised by a lot of old people, so they kind of treated me like an adult. I was a very well-behaved, country folk. I feel like kids today are just brainwashed by the technology. They're not as keen, but I was treated like an adult, my whole life, and it was just all. My grandfather, he was a Vietnam vet, and that's why we were watching Aliens and Predators and movies of that nature. Even though I was young, he was like, the world's an ugly place. You got to learn it now. Like that was his mentality. So, but yeah, super, super young. And, this is what really makes this experience so difficult, because the lifelong processing at such an influential age like that, when you just come to and you just start to understand reality, you witness something that is way beyond our reality. And that really, it messes you up. And of course you don't talk about it.
What was the feeling that you remember? What was the feeling?
Oh,
yeah.
I had no feeling. I didn't understand. I just, like I said, I was asleep. I woke up, stood on back of my bed, and I saw something very strange. And when you are that ignorant of something, you know, to have fear of something, you have to have a certain amount of knowledge to be afraid of it. You understand? Like, to me, I was just seeing something in the sky. I didn't even know it was something weird, you know? I mean, other than the reactions of everyone downstairs, but I wasn't with the adults. I just heard people running towards the back of the house and screaming the loudest I've ever heard, you know, loud enough to wake me up and take a peek. And so it's one of those things where the processing now, what came after, that was the scary part, you know, then the fear during the incident, nothing. No, to that point when it was just hovering there, fear did come, but that's coming in a little bit. When we were just watching it, it was just a curiosity. Oh, what's that? You know what I mean? Oh, that's interesting. Oh, that's oh, maybe it's a drone. Oh, maybe it's a plane. Is it a helicopter? Why isn't it making sounds? Why is it so quiet? Why is it shaped like that? Why is it just sitting there? And the whole incident, which I'll get to, all of this takes place over 5 to 6 minutes per the police reports we have. So 5 to 6 minutes. That's not me saying it. That's not my family. That's 5 to 6 minutes. That's the official police report.
Which is validated because you were able to obtain, I think, the police reports, right? And you knew what time the police were phoned, but that's getting ahead. But
yep. So we're all watching this thing. Now the adults were memorized by it, and they had the same amount of ignorance of what they were seeing. We were country folk, very religious area. Aliens and UFOs was, you know, just jibber jabber talk. So we're all watching this thing. Then all of a sudden, and this next part is so difficult to explain because it all happened at once, simultaneously, just about. So we're all gazed on this object. And remember, the cloud shelf was 1,200 feet. So we're sitting there, and all of a sudden, I don't know if it was a beam of light, a ball of light, something light shot directly down onto the craft. And obviously, we couldn't see where it came from. From the bottom of the cloud shelf to the craft, this beam of light, ball of light shot down. The second, almost as if before the ball even hit it, and it was so fast, red and orange sparks started shooting out of this craft, like massive red and orange sparks. And then it exploded. But it didn't just explode like a normal explosion. The outsides where the blue lights were, that exploded like what you would imagine like a firework or SpaceX rocket exploding. You know, that normal wide debris, little tiny chunks. My family actually described it as like a firework. And this is where the fear came in. Oh, yeah, we were afraid. We thought we were going to have huge pieces because, you know, like I explain it like this. When you watch a firework, right? If you didn't know what a firework was and you watch that first one go off, you're going to run because you're going to think pieces are going to hit you because you're looking at it at a 45. This was the same angle we were looking at this craft. So imagine looking at a firework, the same 45. That's how we were looking at this craft. So when it exploded, the outskirts where the 3 blue lights were, that scattered like normal debris. Knowing what I know now, that would have been like 250 yards to 350 yards of a debris field. Okay, like pretty much like a firework or anything else. So this is
there was
where
no
it gets
sound.
weird.
I just wanted to interject real quick.
No.
I think importantly here, there was no sound
Of the explosion
at all.
No. And now that was the outskirts of the, and why am I talking about the explosion and the outer parts of the craft? What happened to the rest of it? This is where stuff gets pretty wonky. Okay. It gets pretty freaking wild. It's hard to explain. So as all this explosion is going on, that very bright plasma light in the center of it sucked itself into itself. And whatever core or base that was of that craft shot directly down. I mean, boom, straight down, like the block. Whatever was holding that light, I don't know. I was 3.5 years old. I can't tell you. I can just tell you what I saw. Whatever was left of it shot directly down into the creek.
So you actually saw the object that you described as dark and sort of rock-like material. The triangle descended at that point to the ground, or seemed like
what was left of it. The thing
Oh, so
exploded completely.
when you saw the things coming out the sides, it wasn't just a spray of sparks. It literally came
that was
apart,
the start.
and literally
the sparks started first, and then very shortly after the sparks started, then the explosion came.
So it was palpable that the craft came apart and actually exploded into pieces.
Oh yeah, it.
So it wasn't just a flash of light and an explosion. You actually saw
it was explosion, and that middle piece, like I said, that ball of light, it sucked itself into it, whether the light turned off or whatever. But the best way I can describe it, it like impacted in on itself, like a fail safe. Knowing what I know now, like a fail safe, like a cutoff switch or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then once that blinding white light went off, you just saw like the chunk there. That was the only thing that was left, was a little piece in the middle. And that's what went down. Everything else was obliterated into so many tiny pieces, like obliterated. Well, we've seen a lot of these, unfortunately. We've seen some of these aircraft crashes, and really interesting. And we've seen what's left of them and how crazy it could be. And there's no telling what kind of technology this craft had and how a certain technology can explode. Another strange thing is there was, not to get too far ahead, no fire marks anywhere, which that's kind of weird.
And not to get too far ahead either, but nothing was seen, no projectile or anything was seen impacting the craft.
I saw a ball of light, a beam of light, a ball of light. That's what came from before the red and orange sparks started shooting out, and before the mass explosion, there from the cloud shelf at the bottom, there was a beam of light or a ball of light that came down. The second that light hit that's what engaged the red and orange sparks.
Okay,
and then shortly after the red and orange sparks was the craft's actual explosion.
Okay, got you. I thought initially you were saying that beam of light came from the craft.
Oh,
down.
No.
It came from the clouds down to the craft.
It hit the craft as
I see.
Which, I don't like to speculate. I don't know what it was. I know a lot of people out there like to go down some wheel. Is the Galactic Federation of Worlds taking out the bad aliens? That's what a lot of people say. But I personally think it was our own damn government, honestly, taking it out with some satellite beam or something.
Right. That's exactly what I thought. Some kind of satellite-based weapon. If I were a betting man, I would find it more likely that it was a skirmish between factions, secret space programs. Yeah. There's multiple factions and different secret space programs.
Whatever that craft was pissed someone off. I can say that 110%.
And I wonder if it pissed someone off because of its proximity to the nuclear power plant.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. That really makes, I mean, that's national security right there. Anything gets close to a nuclear reactor, there's going to be, I mean, I have no idea. I'm just guessing. I'm speculating, but you would think because it's a nuclear power plant, something somewhere is monitoring this thing. I mean, you would think so.
Well, you saw the playlist, and I don't know if you saw my good friend that was a security officer at that same nuclear plant back in '77. and they had a UFO hover above the plant for 25 minutes, setting off all of the radiation alarms. And then I have a video on my channel. It's under the same UFO crash playlist because it's important. But the following day, after the craft left, all the radiation alarms went off. This is the same nuclear plant, but this was 1977. The following day, the whole security team comes in. They grab their guns, they grab their badges, they go to their station. About 10 minutes in, they're all called to the front. And they come there, and the guys are like, yo, what's going on? And one of the head guys said, hand in all your badges and your weapons, your firearms. And all the guys said, yo, what was going on last night? Because they all saw it, they wanted some answers. The official explanation, a radioactive toxic gas cloud from China traveled all the way around the world, didn't set anything else off, but just landed over our nuclear plant here in New Jersey. We're not in California. We're in New Jersey.
Good gravy.
That radioactive toxic cloud of gas. That's what did it. And the truth is, a lot of people get mad at me. They're like, why do you always say a false sense of national security? Because we have none. Look at Maelstrom Air Force Base. These beings, our nuclear weapons are absolutely worthless. And it may not be aliens. It may be people that are running this world that are very much human beings that have technologies far way beyond us, and if they want to, they can, we're all sitting ducks, but insecurities, we have to feel strong, like, oh yeah, because if the public only really knew how we're not protected, but we are, thankfully these beings don't want us to wipe out ourselves or whatever these fractions are. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing things like shutting down our nuclear sites, like Maelstrom Air Force Base out in Montana, Robert Salas story. That, I think that's really, truly credible at two separate sites. I love that story, and I love it because I grew up near a nuclear plant, and to this day, I'm still recording so many things flying around. Actually, during the drones, I recorded a drone that later went on to be the most viral video in the world. Long story, I'm not getting into it. But on December 4th, I recorded this huge, I think it was the XP4 drone. It was a military drone. I mean, it was, and it was flying towards the nuclear plant. A few weeks later went by, and then they released the map of no-fly zones, and Hancock's Bridge was on there because I reported my drone sighting to the FBI at the New York field office, and that was going towards the nuclear plant. And I said, that's a problem. We don't know whose drones, which I knew all the drones were ours, and I have sources that, family sources that work for Lockheed, and all of these are ours. There are drones. Trust me. But what they're doing with them, that's what the public should be afraid of. See, the public is afraid of the thing in the sky because the public never asks, what is that thing in the sky actually doing? And you know why they allowed people to believe that these drones could possibly be aliens or something else? It's because the truth of the government spying on you within inside your own home at any given time is far more terrifying than extraterrestrials, in my opinion.
Yeah, agreed. But coming back to the story, though,
sidetrack. My bad.
No, that's okay.
It's all connected. New Jersey's weird.
It absolutely is. Yeah. I mean, we are talking about.
So back to the explosion. All right, getting right back to it. So this thing crashed, and what would any logical person do? We all scream, "Oh my God!" Right? Freak out. My mom instantly hung up the phone because she was on the phone with my aunt next door. Instantly hung up the phone. She called 911. That's the Lower Alloways Creek incident. A lot of stuff happens afterwards and during, but that was the incident from our perspective. Any questions before I continue?
So she calls 911, and I think other people simultaneously, or at least one other person, calls the authorities, correct? So this is seen not just by your family. There's other people in the neighborhood who see this
In
same
the
event.
police report, after obtaining this 30 years later, I found this out. The police stations, I believe it was around 2 p.m. or 3 p.m., approximately 30 minutes, 40 minutes north of where we live, the police stations from Woodstown, a completely different town, all day long they were receiving anonymous reports and people leaving their names and contact information, reporting seeing the same thing throughout the entire day and on their way from work. And these are the official police reports. They said they received multiple calls of this thing, but these calls were made prior to our sighting of it. You know, as far as our sighting, my aunt, my mom, her two friends, and me, we were the only ones to see it. There was a house that was actually closer. The police questioned him, and he said he thought he heard something like, but he assumed it was a tree falling. He probably heard the core of it. He probably heard that flop on the ground, but it was storming that night. I told you it was raining. There was wind, and he was surrounded by trees. He thought a tree just fell down and didn't think nothing of it. Don't, okay. It was an explosion sound that, like, there was no sound even during the explosion. But, he was a lot closer, and he could have felt the vibration as if like a tree slapping down. Whatever that centerpiece was hitting the ground like that after explosion, you could feel the vibration,
Yeah.
And
Right.
But multiple police reports.
But just to get clarity on that, so reports were made before you witnessed it. Is
Yes.
there some indication that there was more than one event or more than one explosion, or was Woodstown in the vicinity where they could have seen the craft from?
Oh no,
Woodstown?
this is really, really far. If you had two people on the ground, they wouldn't. It's almost like this craft was slowly making its way down and it eventually stopped behind our place. But all throughout the day, it started way, way up. And from what I could do from the police reports, it seemed like it was slowly cruising south. Like it started north of us, and where it exploded and ended up behind our house, that would have been south, according to the police reports.
Okay, and just one last question before you move on. There isn't the possibility, given that it was storming at that time, that the whitish light that you saw that made contact with the craft at the moment of the explosion, there isn't the possibility that that could have been a lightning strike on that
There
craft?
was no lightning. It was light rain and windy.
Okay.
And thankfully, the Mutual UFO Network, all this little data and information, they covered it extensively. The 6 pages of documentation was actually from them. Yeah, I don't trust Mutual UFO Network at all. Don't get me wrong. But I'm extremely thankful, and I work with many who are in the Mutual UFO Network. I work with many, and they're good people, and I appreciate it. And without them doing their diligence and covering this story, I would have never had the transcripts, the documents, that hard research. And I really appreciated the people that took the time to investigate my family's case. And in later times, Bud Hopkins was working with, I don't know if you know who he is. He was working with my mom, and he was talking to John Mack about my mom because we're in New Jersey and, New York City. And, Bud Hopkins had a thing for beautiful young women. No, I'm joking. My mom was beautiful. She was 22, smoking hot, 5'9", skinny. So, he was a great guy, and he really did a lot. But after a while, my mom didn't want the publicity, Unsolved Mysteries was coming out, sightings, all this crazy stuff, and she didn't want anything to really do with it, so she just cut off all contact to all of them, and she just wanted me to have a normal life because the things she was being interviewed for wasn't the crash. She wasn't allowed to talk about the crash. She wasn't allowed to talk about that. Things she was talking about are her own personal experiences. She was a contactee. I've never been taken by extraterrestrials or anything like that, to my knowledge, I should add. But she was, and it was a very regular thing. And yeah, it's definitely weird being a kid and being raised like that.
Yeah, so, and it was revealed from this event to her
Yeah.
that she was an abductee. Let's get to that part of the story.
Okay. So what
So the-
happened after she made the phone call, right?
Right, yeah, let's go
Okay.
there, yeah.
So she made the 911 call. It's important to note her exact words. When she called 911, she said, "Please send help. Some sort of aircraft just exploded behind our house." Later on in the reports, the police officer said she was smart to not say it was a UFO because we wouldn't have came and taken it seriously.
Yeah.
They say that in the
Absolutely.
report. I'm like, what a douchebag. Anyway, so word to the wise for everyone out there. If you see a UFO crash, don't say it's a UFO when you call a police station. Tell them that it was a small aircraft and they will get there immediately. So for all, if you ever actually see a UFO crash, do not say it was a UFO. Otherwise, the authorities will not come see what's going on.
Yeah.
It's the truth. So that's what my mom says. She hung up the phone 10 minutes later. Police officer arrives. He stays there 5-10 minutes. So at this point, it puts us right around 10:25, right around there. And he takes a very brief where, what, when, thanks. And then they left and he went to my aunt's house next door. Same 3 questions, police stuff. And then they left. I don't know what they did for the rest of the night. They left. We stayed at our house during this entire incident. We did not go to the crash site, A, because we weren't allowed to, and B, it was raining late at night and we weren't going out there on a dark road after something we didn't know if there was oil or chemicals or, word to the wise. Another fun fact. If you see some sort of aircraft crash, do not go towards it. Just food for thought, everyone. You have no idea what payloads or fuel that craft can be using. I'm not talking about aliens. I'm talking about the stuff we have. Do not go near it. You can, just the fumes. You can have all sorts of cancers and stuff like that. It's silly. Don't do it. So, 10 minutes goes by. Approximately 25 minutes after my mother made the 911 call, 2 black town cars pull into the driveway. All right, I sorry, I have to make this side note. I know how people think. I've told the story so much. I really want people to understand this. All right, the show X-Files came out in 1993. The movie Men in Black came out in 1996. Okay, this is 1991. I just want to explain this so it's not our imagination. Also, I'm saying this because we just witnessed something crash behind our house. If you witness something crash behind your house and you call the authorities, wouldn't you expect government and military and, FAA people to come to your house to ask you what you saw, right? Not strange.
Especially after, what you saw in particular, like it was something,
Yeah.
kind of anomalous, I would have expected myself, somebody unusual to show up after something like that.
Yeah. But that wasn't our mindset. We when these 2 cars pulled in, we just thought, here comes, the government. They're going to ask us a bunch of questions and we're going to give them a bunch of answers, and hopefully we'll get some answers to what it was, because we're confused. That was our God's honest intent. We at this point, we still weren't clicking that this was something highly advanced. That wasn't in there yet.
And
So,
Robert, real quick, your
Yep.
mom has passed, correct?
yes, 4 years ago, my mother passed 2 months before I found the 6 pages of evidence validating her claims, which, she always kept to herself. I saw her get made fun of a lot, etc. When she would finally open up and tell someone the truth. I remember being a little kid and watching people laugh at her. That's when I learned to shut up, especially because I was a pastor. I learned to shut up real quick. I'm like, I only told the people that were closest to me, or if someone seemed like they would believe it, I would share them the story. I've been sharing it my whole life. It wasn't until 4 years ago and I found the evidence that I had details from sides of the story that I had no way of knowing. And I was able to see the full picture and how deep this actually goes. I was pretty blown away by what I saw on the surface, but the rest of it and the evidence behind it really just opened up a can of worms that I could never imagine. But unfortunately, 2 months after my mother passed away, she was 51 years old, I found the evidence, and I just had this like sickening feel, like, why couldn't I found this 2 months prior? And also, ironically, the same exact week that I found this evidence, that's when the Pentagon released a Tic Tac UFO. All that nonsense. The exact same week. It was absolutely a coincidence, I assure you.
Well,
Absolutely coincidence.
Our condolences about your mom. I didn't
Yeah.
mean to get us off track. I just had
No.
seen a thing in the comments about your mom's memory, and I was like, wait a minute, I think she passed. So I wanted
Yeah.
our viewers to be aware of that.
And that's a big reason of why I came forward, because I know that my family and my mother, we are not the only ones that have experienced things of this nature. And after losing my mom, I felt such a guilt, that I just wanted to help others. And I wanted her experience to be validated. And in hopes, I would hope by sharing this story, others would be brave enough to come forward and speak before it's too late. Because my mom went to the grave without being validated, when the evidence has been there all along. It was just buried and hidden so much that it was just really, really hard to find. As any good experience, I always say the truth doesn't go viral. The truth does not go viral. The nonsense goes viral. They rather talk about Roswell for the next 200 years than to talk about the UFO crash that happened in 1991. And I'm still alive. And other witnesses are still alive. Most of them have died, including the guys that wrote these articles. Okay? So, the whole thing is, we are the disclosure. Don't wait to share your story. Get it out there and share it before it's too late.
Well, I think a lot of people, they go through the first they have a hard time even with themselves believing what happened.
Yeah.
And they know that they're going to get the ridicule.
Yeah.
And a lot of them won't come out because of that.
That was me. I mean, there was so many times where I wanted, I remember back when I was a pastor, and we would all be watching a science fiction movie or something like that. And in my head, I'm like, oh, if you guys only really knew. And I'm sitting there chuckling. And they're like, what's going on? Jesus is good. Amen, man. These aliens don't got nothing on Jesus. That would be my response. You know what I mean? So it was, I just, unfortunately, I had to watch my mom find out the hard way. And it was brutal. And just watching her crying and stuff, and crying alone. She developed a drinking problem afterwards, to just block it all out. There's a lot of, and I haven't got to the part that made this so difficult. The hardest thing for our family, it wasn't the craft exploding behind our house. Yeah, it was a little scary to watch, but we were okay. Life goes on. It's not a big deal. What was scary was what came in this car, these 2 town cars. That's the scary part of this story.
Well, let's go on with that.
Yes.
So
Yes.
2 Lincoln Town cars pull up, black cars.
Yeah, black. Yep.
And who exits these cars
Okay,
and
so
comes to
out
the
the
door?
first car is a gentleman wearing an Air Force suit, Air Force attire, little badges and all that stuff. Clearly Air Force, clearly military,
In uniform.
in uniform. Is that weird after seeing an aircraft explode? No. you expect to see someone from the military, especially if it's an odd looking craft. Like you want the military. What if it was Russia? Whoa! What if it was China? Oh no, near a nuclear plant? You would hope military would come there, right? Now, out the second car, we saw 2 men wearing black suits, black hats, no sunglasses. Calm down. It was night and raining. No sunglasses. This wasn't strange. We thought they were government, FBI agents, CIA, something like that. Some sort of government investigative crew that studies crashes. It was not strange. We weren't afraid. There was no reason to be afraid. We expected people to come. We knew they would because we just witnessed something explode behind our yard and no one wants to talk about it. Drive you crazy. All right, so they come to the door. My mother lets them right in. At this point, her 2 girlfriends are there. This is 25 minutes after she made the initial call. They all go into the main living room where the girls were originally watching the baseball game. They have my mother and the 2 girls sit down on the couch, and the gentleman in the Air Force goes up against the far wall facing the road, and the 2 gentlemen in the black suits stand in front of my mother. They're sitting on the couch, and there's a coffee table that was in front of them. And I am not joking. Everything sounds kind of normal until this point, and this is where the story just goes off the handles. So, warning everyone, you're going to hear a lot of wild, wacky stuff, but I'm just telling you what happened. That's all I can do. So, don't hold me to it. So, the very first thing that come out the Men in Black's mouth, we'll call them Men in Black. I don't know who they were working for. They did not identify themselves. The Air Force guy, you could tell he was Air Force. These other guys, I don't know who they are. Men in Black. Okay, whatever. Very first thing they say, when we were assuming, what did you see? What happened? Can you tell us what the craft? No. None of those questions. Very first thing they ask, can you draw 3 different kinds of extraterrestrials? And they had a notepad and a pencil, and they were holding the pencil very strange, in a very strange way. Like a barbarian, you know what I mean? They weren't holding it right. I don't know. They would just do really subtle, strange things. But the CIA, FBI uses psych ops on people that they're interrogating on things. So I know they're able to do that. But just weird, anything weird, I'll let you know about these characters.
So let's just linger on that for a second. That's really peculiar. So do you think that they knew that one of these women were an abductee, and that was potentially why there was a craft in the area, and they wanted to identify who it was, and they knew that the abductee maybe would answer those questions, would have answers to those questions. And that was kind of like an initial litmus test to kind of figure out, okay, it's you're the one, and does that give an indication as to the nature of the incident? Maybe it wasn't, to do with the nuclear power plant. I mean, this is, there's lots of branches here that we could go down, but what's your interpretation of that question?
Well, you're very observant. And in retrospect, Yes, I've came to the same conclusions, and when you hear the whole story and everything, it's kind of hard not to come to these conclusions. But to the average person who is just hearing this story for the first time, it that that takes a lot to register, and it could, like you said, it could be a lot of different things. That's why I talk about all aspects. I don't like to pinpoint one thing or another, even though what you said, that's absolutely what I believe. 110%. Oh, that's what I believe. But I try really hard to keep my story as it is and keep out my personal feelings, because I understand that only a handful of people in the world have witnessed an actual UFO crash, especially with so much documentation and evidence to actually back that up. So I try to really hold back my personal feelings on everything, because I don't want to muddy up, and I don't want to dishonor my mom. My mom's not here to speak for her experiences. I have talked about the different beings she was in contact with. She was in the hybrid program. They were extracting eggs out of her, doing this, and she believed that the beings in that triangular craft were known as the tall white, these very tall gray extraterrestrials with white skin, and they were using her for hybrid programs and blah blah blah. That's what my mom believed, and that's why Unsolved Mysteries, sightings, Bud Hopkins. That's why Bud Hopkins was talking to my mom, and when she would go under in hypnosis for being a girl that had me at 17 years old, she, high school diploma, out in the middle of nowheres, and she's talking about advanced genetics and just mind blowing stuff that there's no way for me to even comprehend. And obviously, Bud Hopkins and Unsolved Mysteries and all these other shows were interested, in the things she was saying. A lot like Linda, the Brooklyn, New York case that Bud Hopkins. Yep, very, very same time period, same area, same thing. And I have my own, but anyway.
So she answered the question. So she immediately had an answer to that question.
No, she didn't. So let me go back, because I wanted as much details, and I'm going to spitball through this part pretty quick to conserve time. So they asked the three girls, they're sitting there, can you draw three different kinds of extraterrestrials? My mom's two friends, they start cracking up, thinking it was like a joke. Like, are they just trying to break the ice because they think, we're terrified? So they try to make a funny joke to lighten up the mood, because we're shaking because we just saw something. Your adrenaline goes. Yeah. When you see an aircraft explode that close to you, trust me, I would like to see your hand not shake like that. Like you're going to be shaking. So they honestly thought these two men wearing black suits were joking. But my mom, she wasn't laughing, which was weird. But she didn't do anything. And there was just like kind of awkward silence while the girls were laughing, but they eventually stopped laughing. And there was an awkward silence, and the two girls says, it's getting late. And they asked the two men, they're like, it's getting late. We were out until 4 a.m. the night before. This is all documented in like reports and stuff. They were all out super late the night before, and they were tired. At this point, it was like almost 10:40 p.m. on a Sunday night. They were tired. They've been partying Friday and Saturday like young people do, So the two girls asked the men in black, are we able to go? Do you need anything else from us? They said, no, you're free to go. The girls pick up their bags. They get on their coats, and they head out. And they didn't think anything strange. They knew my mom would be talking to people because it was her house. They didn't live there. You know what I mean? They were tired. They went home. Didn't think anything of it. Shortly after that, after they left, my mother picks up, I wish she didn't do this. My mother picks up the notepad, and she starts drawing three different kinds of ETs. And not even quite sure how she did it, or where did it come from, or even how she knew what she drew on there. You know what I
Right,
mean?
because presumably at that point she had no conscious recollection of her abduction experiences,
None.
but yet she was able to do that, and they knew that she would potentially be able to do that. They knew somehow that that they could draw that out of her, and maybe
It seemed as if that was it seemed like when they came there, they weren't coming there to ask questions. They were coming there to confirm,
to identify her. Yeah.
that's a better word, to identify. That was kind of like because like I said, we were expecting the normal questions. What did you see? What did sound? Did you see how it exploded? Can you describe none of those questions? And the Air Force guy, he was just standing he didn't say a word during all this. He just stood there, blank stare on his face, off in the corner, you know. And this is where he comes in. This is where it gets a little weird. And as you stated, at this point, my mom has no understanding of ET contact or that she's been in contact. They take my mother you went up steps and it was my playroom. It was a little playroom, a lot smaller. It's not big like the living room, like a perfect little cute place. And the gentleman in the Air Force, they did a very brief regression therapy on my mother. The Air Force guy did that. As it turns out, they use it for post-traumatic stress disorder. Like if you got a combat veteran and he can't recall what happened to his squad and they need that information, they will call these analysts in that specialize in regression in order to get intel out of these soldiers that went through a very traumatic experience. So a very brief hypnosis. It was about 5 minutes long. And unfortunately, my mother, blah, 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 blah. And during this time, the men in black were the ones standing off to the side. Why, the Air Force guy, all right, slow breathe in, dim the lights, that whole little process, very short. Then after that, just to speed it up, after that, they go back down to the living room. My mom's back down there. What's up, Anthony? Epic TV. What's going on? That's my boy, Project Horizon. So they go back downstairs, and then the men in black come forward, and they say to my mom, "Do you have any questions?" And my mom asks 3 very simple, motherly, loving questions. But the responses she gets is truly amazing. But before I get into those, because I think these 3 questions is probably the most important part of the story, even more so than the UFO. But any questions?
I would just point out to the audience there is some precedent for that. So I found that surprising at first. I don't think that's the typical behavior of the Men in Black, although this wasn't the Men in Black who regressed her. You're saying it was the Air Force
Yes.
officer.
Mm-hmm.
There is some precedent. I know, like Larry Warren, I think the Rendlesham Forest incident, they drugged him, and I think they hypnotized him post-experience. And it's thought by me, and this is one of my main hypotheses, is that my lab abductions are intended on getting the information through hypnotic regression or technology-assisted hypnotic regression about their abduction experiences. And they do want... And there might have been who knows, a MyLab abduction that happened with your mother, because normally they want to get, I think anyway, all the details of what happened, what this alien race is up to, what they're doing with your mother, etc. Not to get too sidetracked on that, but I just wanted to point that out. There's some precedent and background about the military regressing witnesses to events and abductees.
To see how much they know and if they're going to be a problem. And if they do know too much of them being in these programs, which I'm about to get to, I'll fill everyone in on what they do, that people that do recall, do remember, and do encounter these, they have ways to handle those people.
That's the other thing I wanted to point out, because in Larry Warren's case, he suspected that the reason he was hypnotized might have been to tamper with his memory of the event and
Yeah.
maybe use, post-hypnotic suggestions to kind of confuse the memory.
You can make people believe anything if you have them under a true hypnosis. You can make them think they're a chicken. If you can make them think they're a chicken, you can make them think anything you want.
Right.
And it's not, when a comedian does it on a stage, it's funny. But when it's someone doing it for nefarious reasons, bro, that can be scary. I'm glad I've never been hypnotized. I've had hypnotists offer me, because knowing my mom, worked with Bud Hop. Robert, we know you got something going on. I'm like, hell no, you're not hypnotizing me. I don't even let people give me readings, like card readings, nothing. I don't want nothing from anyone. Like, you are not reading me. You are not getting in my mind. No way. This is my reality. You can scoot right on out of it. I'm terrified. I'm not knocking those people. I'm personally terrified of hypnosis.
Yeah, and that
there's things I hide, for good reason.
Right, and that might be wise. That might be wise.
I don't
As an
want to
abduction
remember.
researcher, we think that the only way you can get to the details of these events is through hypnosis a lot of the time, and so it's just it's a tool that
It's a tool.
you're kind of maybe forced to rely upon, but there is it definitely is a double-edged sword, and there can be definitely dangers to it. But anyway, yeah, moving on with so he gives your mother a brief regression, and then we were at the questions.
Oh yeah, the questions. So they asked my mom, "Do you have any questions?" My mom says, "Yeah." After realizing for the first time in her life that these beings have been taking her out of her room, that's when she saw the hybrid program. It started, well, they would always come and visit when she was a little kid, but just watching her, not interacting, other than my grandmother would find her with scars, and my grandmother would dismiss it as she must have scratched herself when she was sleeping, even though all of her fingernails were cut. And it was a scar, it wasn't a scratch. And you're like, well, that's a strange scar. But it was at 9, when my mother was 9 years old. She just got her menstrual cycle. And that's when this hybrid program started with her. And it seemed like it continued for the rest of her life. She had a lot of female problems down there, probably due to them extracting embryos, implanting embryos, extracting embryos. It takes a toll on a woman's body.
That's not untypical with an abductee.
She bled constantly. She basically had her period about 3 weeks out of every month. Yeah, 3 weeks at a time. When she was 25, she had her lung collapse, which was very interesting to me when they were looking at it, comparing it to divers and astronauts and stuff. And I'm like, well, in theory, if my mom was actually taken by beings on a craft somewheres, those beings maybe weren't using what human beings use, well, I guess that would impact a human being's lungs if you're traveling somewheres on a different kind of species, and maybe they need that environment for them to be different than our environment. And from what my mom would say of how many times they were doing this back and forth with her, it wouldn't surprise me that she had so many of the problems she did. But going back to the questions, I'm getting off, but it's important details, just weird physical side effects. But it was at this moment, my mother realized that this is happening to her. So yeah, she had questions. More importantly, She had a 3.5-year-old son being a single mother. And the only thing she could think about was protecting her child. So the very first question my mom asked, are these things dangerous? Good question. The men in black said, if they were dangerous, do you think we would still be here? My mom said, okay, yep, makes sense. Right? Logical. Great question to ask. A lot of people, oh, I would have asked this. I would. Like 20 minutes ago, my mom didn't even know what an alien was. It was almost like they triggered like what you were saying. Like they orchestrated this to let my mom know what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Or I don't. It just seems like some alternative like motive going on.
You mean the whole event itself
Just
might have been
everything.
purpose towards the discovery of.
I don't know.
I think everything
I
is
don't know.
multifaceted, and to me, that's not out of the realm of possibility. That there could have been some higher purpose to the whole event, and it was meant to,
Yeah,
bring
I
to
don't have a
awareness of your
clue.
mother. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
but
sure my mom
I think
did, and I wish she was here to share this story because
yeah.
hearing all this from her my whole life, I that bums me out, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing because honestly, I wish this wasn't me doing it. I know my mom would have been on all of these. Once I found the evidence, she would have came on with me to everything. Anyway, sidetrack. Back to the Men in Black. Let's go. So, first question made sense. Second question my mother asked. She said, "Why don't people know about these things? Right? If they're real, why don't people know about them?" Excellent question. The Men in Black said, this is 1991. And remember what I said about the Men in Black movie, X-Files, X-Files 1993, Men in Black 1996. This is 1991. Really, really listen to me when I say this. The Men in Black said, we are doing everything we can by preconditioning. Within the next 10 years, you will see signs of extraterrestrials and UFOs in movies, magazines, news articles, newspapers, and other forms of media. Obviously, the internet wasn't really a thing, so YouTube didn't make that one, guys. Sorry. But, this is how it was. And my mom said, my mom thought about it a little bit and said, well, she started thinking about like the movie E.T., oh my gosh, Encounters of Third Kind,
Mhm.
all these different movies and stuff like that. And she's like, yeah, I guess it makes sense. Alien, Predator, all these Star Trek. Like, all right, they are preconditioned. The answer made sense to us. Like, okay, yeah, that makes sense, because you don't want people to freak out. If you just dropped everything, humanity would lose their marbles, especially when they find out their own government's been screwing them over their entire people would people would lose it. But
And another thing is that
yeah.
they may want to slowly make us aware of the presence of ET because they don't know whether ET itself might suddenly make its presence known and how that could suddenly destabilize the system
Oh yeah.
without warning. And I personally think that could be one of the motives, but not to get sidetracked on that. But
Yeah.
and I
That
was
was a
also
good question down there. I saw pop up. I just want to respond. Yeah, hybrids. Well, the Nephilim were known to be the offspring of beings that came from the heavens, space, down to Earth and mated with Earth women, which created the giants. The same reason that Moses had to take an extra 40-year detour is because a bunch of alien hybrids were stomping around in the desert, so tales of these kind of sort of genetic hybrid Nephilim offspring, whatever. It's been going on since forever, even before Earth. I believe human beings are genetic beings. Like we're created, we're intelligently created. I think human beings are extraterrestrials. People always say,
yeah,
I need proof. I say, look in the mirror. You want to know extraterrestrials are real? Look in the mirror. You think we just poop out of nowheres?
Exactly.
The body is amazing, and it's intelligently designed. It's mechanics. Mechanics is intelligent. It's not accident. You know, it's found within everything. This entire universe is intelligently designed. It's
Yes.
insane. I don't know by who. Oh, I'm not. I don't even try to ponder that. I just call it source, like some source somewheres that just created everything. And what that is, I don't need to know it. I'm okay with it. I understand it exists in all of us, but to try to put something so big into this stupid little thing we have in our human heads, that thing we call a brain, it's impossible. Whatever created the universe cannot fit inside of our heads.
Yeah.
So why even bother? Why critique others when they believe something? It's not worth it. Just we can't fit the universe in our head. We never will be. Aliens are trying to, and they still can't, and they got to steal our genetics because they're wiping themselves out. You know, like like go figure. You know, we all make mistakes. So just take it and understand everything's connected and roll with it. But yeah, these things have been around for a while.
And I would just point out, it's my feeling from studying the abduction phenomenon that species merger might be something incredibly commonplace amongst advanced civilizations. That this is something that they do regularly. That there's a lot of this going on with other species, and there's lots of reasons why.
It's useful.
One species wants, in the most common case, I think, wants attributes of another species, attributes that they find viable. And it's maybe not often, a case of the species wanting to take over the planet, but wanting the physical attributes of the body hardware of the
well, inbreeding, that's a real thing, and it causes a lot of genetic mutations within just about many animal species on Earth. Too much of the in-house breeding from like brother sister or family member can cause a lot of genetic mistakes. And I believe to really keep things alive and good, it's healthy to mix different cultures, different races, human beings wise. Like, I mean, think about it. You want to have someone that's really strong, but someone that is really smart, right? And you want to create someone that's really strong and really smart. Well, that's easy. I just steal Elon's genetics. And let's say I just take, just for fun, Mike Tyson's genetics. Let's put that together and look at what I created. And then I show my God friends over here, or things people call gods. I'm like, yo, look at what I just made. I bet you the guy I made can whip your guy's butt. And that other guy goes, oh, yeah? Well, I just made this guy, and he's going to crap all over your planet. Okay, well, here's, I think it's a melting pot situation where some people are using it to benefit their species. Other people, there's a lot. Well, we're on YouTube. I won't get into some of the other nefarious reasons behind things for safety.
That's all right. We're on Rumble too, so
okay. But no, YouTube, when you start to talk about the T word, human T word, they get very weird about. They don't like that. So we'll go around, but it happens.
If you think about genetics, though, if you would take Elon Musk and Mike Tyson, it's very possible that you would not create some hyper bred thing.
You might get a mutant that likes pigeons and has Asperger's. Like that would not be good.
Because it is so, our DNA structure is so complex that, I mean, yes, we can clone different things and do some things, but to really get down into it, from the research that I've done, it's not as easy as people would think. It's not like watching a movie and you see the Hollywood effects and all that. This is when you're dealing with the DNA structure, it's immensely complicated.
To give you a perfect, Todd is absolutely right. Going back to my mother and her hybrid experiences, my mother would talk about over time, after a while, she kept on seeing more and more for her kids. This is why would these beings do it over and over and over again if they really perfectly nailed it? And she said at one point she remembered being up there and there was a good amount of them standing over there, 5 or 6, I forget, good amount of them. But some of them looked very deformed. Some of them really looked humanoid. Some of them looked like that perfect, like if you took a gray extraterrestrial and mixed it with a human, some of them look like them. But when I say deformed, like some of them look like Sloth from the Goonies times 2. But she says she loved them all the same, and they were her babies, and I guess they were using her for emotional connection. Like they would bring the kids in, all right, go feel what it's like to get. And my mom would cry and say, why can't I have one? Can I please take them with me? Why can't I be with them? They said they can't survive on Earth. And that answer wasn't good enough for my mom. It really tore her up, knowing, even though to most people that would probably terrify you, seeing something that came from you that looked like that. But some of these beings are so dang telepathic. Like regardless of what they look like, what you feel overrides what you see.
Right.
You're like, that's the ugliest thing. And then you just feel this warmth and connection. And you're like, I've never felt this with anything in my entire life. How is this even psychologically? So it's like my mom's mom. And think about the questions she's asking the Men in Black. They're, about protecting me, which I'll get to the third question, which is the big one. But you want to add something?
Oh, me. I was just going to say many abductees report that experience. Some abductees, interestingly, report a different experience and have no emotional connection to the presented hybrids, and then others, feel, this deep, connection and protectiveness and then remorse and dismay at the thought of not being able to stay with them or take them with, back to Earth. But yeah, okay, yeah, we can move on to the
third question.
The third question.
All right. Now, at this point, I want to make this point. At this point, at no point did the Men in Black or the Air Force guy admit in any sort of way that there are ETs or anything like that. Their questioning and everything was floating around there, but they didn't come out and say, all of this is real to my mom. Up until this question, and this was the one that really hit. So my mom, being a loving, nurturing mother that really cared about her only child, me, well, not her only child. Apparently, I have space brothers and sisters. I've never got to see them. I hope I can someday, but probably not because they can't survive down here, I guess. I don't know. I've never seen them. I'm speculating at this point. But the third final question my mom asked the Men in Black, she said, when these beings have me on a craft somewheres, what would happen if something happened to my baby? She was talking about me, or my elderly grandfather, who is very old and that she took care of as well. And she said, what would happen if something happened to my baby or my grandfather and I'm off on the craft somewheres? I'm not here to help them. What would happen? Like, hey, why they're doing this, and what if my kid needs me in the middle of the night and they got me on some UFO cruising around the universe and my kid falls down the steps and needs my help? What am I going to do? So the Men in Black, they said, they use small grays that stay behind. And if anything was to happen to your child or your grandfather, they would have you back. And the Men in Black snapped their fingers like that. like very weird. Haha, look at what we can do. Just really, just another little tiny weird thing, like how they were holding the pencil, how they snapped their fingers. Other than that, they were clean shaved. A lot of people were like, "Oh, no facial hair." Military and government personnel do not have beards like me. But like you expect a government official or a military person to be clean shaved. So the whole thing of like a Men in Black being clean shaved is something weird. It's not weird. Why would we think that was weird? That's not a weird detail. The way they acted and their line of questioning, like what Jim was saying, how like they always seem to be a couple steps ahead. Like, oh, well, we'll put this out here so we can get you to this, And when they said that about them using small grace to stay behind, and if anything happened, to me or my grandfather, they would have her back like that. That kind of hit her in the head. And the Men in Black said, "Do you have any other questions?" Because my mom was pretty much stunned, and my mom said, "No." And Men in Black said, "Well, okay. Tomorrow, many UFO researchers, news agencies, media outlets, etc., are going to be contacting you. You will say it was a helicopter, or we will take your son away." My mother said, "Okay, I understand." They went out the door, and we never laid eyes on them again. Now, this is the most, remember, I said these 3 questions are the most important part of the story. My family remained anonymous. Even when the TV shows came out and filmed, my mother's face was going to be blurred. That's until the Men in Black never let the episodes air. We signed all the waivers. Unsolved Mysteries came out, filmed. Show Sightings came out, filmed. All gone. Poof. Even though my mom signed the waivers and everything, and they had a show on the same thing, it was just gone. It's like anything. And that wasn't even talking about the UFO crash. That was just my mom talking about, her ET encounters without talking about the crash, because she didn't want to lose her son. And this shows you exactly how they operate. All the questions and everything they were gauging from her was, what can we use against this woman? What's the one thing she loves? And just by my mom's questions to her, let them know the one thing she cared more in the world about, even more than the aliens flying around and taking her on a ship. My mom's number one priority is what would happen to my son. And being a single mom, they knew it. They knew she wasn't married. They used that against her. And that's why my mom played the script. She would say as much as she did, but that's why she slowly pulled away from everything, because she was concerned. She was under the impression they would lock her up in a loony bin and put me into state care, or maybe something a lot worse. I tell myself, hopefully it would have been state care. It would have probably been something a lot more sinister. Because you can't just go around illegally stealing people's children for a false sense of freaking national security. Really? Threaten a 22-year-old single mom? And that's another reason I'm coming public, because whoever's behind going around threatening a young woman like that, threatening to take their kid away, the reason I'm talking about this now, I would like them to come take me away. I'm ready when they are. And I got a lot of .223 all around me, boy. Let's go. I'm not afraid of them. They threatened my mother. She suffered. I'm here to represent everyone that has been through the same thing, and I'm tired of their crap. And I want accountability. And I want our government, Congress, and Senate, whoever these black projects are, I want them to burn to the ground. I want them to suffer like my mom suffered, like I suffered. Living with all this my entire life was brutal, man. And I'm angry, and I do want revenge. Let me make that clear.
And how long did she live with the background fear of, if I slip up or if I say anything about this, they might genuinely take my son, away from me?
She always did. And she there's certain things I don't talk about publicly, and for anyone that's listened, the things I don't talk about publicly is because, there's things that are very personal to me, things my mother told me, and I don't think the world's ready to hear all that right now. And that's in between me and my mother. And I don't want the world to know things about me. Same reason I don't want to be hypnotized. My mom told me a lot of things, but she waited until I was 24 years old and had my own personal experience. No, not an alien abduction. I didn't have that happen to me, but I had an experience with something I can't explain physically. And that's when she filled me in on things that she was waiting for my whole life. She never wanted to freak me out or scare me or anything like that. And I wear it really close to my heart. But yeah, she was always afraid, and she always told me, she said, patience. My whole entire life, she said, she actually knew exactly what age when I released the documentary, the summer that I found the evidence, I was turning 33 years old. And my mom, because I used to get impatient because I would watch TV shows about Roswell and stuff, and I would look at my mom years after, and I'm like, Mom, our story's way better than why aren't we on TV? Robbie, patience. Someday it will be your day. Just patience, patience, patience. When you turn 33, you'll have it all figured out. Just be patient, honey. Just be patient. Just I got so freaking tired. Anytime I had a question, I just got be patient. And it turns out, 33 years old, I found the evidence. I come out publicly. The only thing I couldn't predict is that she would have passed away before seeing me get to that point to share this and do what I need to do. So it sucks. It sucks. It's brutal. But she did her best,
What's your explanation for how she knew about 33? Do you think something was communicated to her during one of the abduction events, which she had recollection of, which sometimes, future events are made mention of?
Yeah, I have no idea. I can talk about like some of the beings. Like, she had encounters from everything from reptilian beings to your little Zeta Grays. The only one she had a name for, like an actual like correct name, were the Zetas, like the little Grays and stuff. Everything else she had nicknames for them, but reptilians, insectoid beings, humanoid beings, which that's a whole nother story. But one of the really interesting ones that she always talked about, and these beings were always like showing her stuff and stuff like that. She called them the blues. Yeah.
Yeah, Todd, why don't you bring up our picture of the blues? I'm really interested. What? Give us everything that she told you about the blues, because that's really underreported. The interactions with these.
Before I'll explain the blues. But one point growing up as a kid, knowing that this phenomenon is real, one point my mother always made growing up, especially after asking the trustworthy men in black, like we should even be listening to them. She always said, never be afraid, never be afraid, never be afraid, never be afraid, never be afraid. And when it came to anything extraterrestrial, her answer always, never. The fear don't help. Even no matter the situation, never be afraid.
And that's one of the common messages that the abductees themselves get from the ETs. They're often told, there's such a common theme of this, don't be afraid, because actually in the last abduction event that I was studying, one of John Mack's, he was told specifically, you can't be afraid because you'll break the connection between us, in order for us
I've never thought about that. Maybe the telepathic it's like when you're having a bad dream and you're afraid and you're falling off the cliff, you wake up out of your deep subconscious.
Yeah.
It's probably like that, right?
I think it is like that, and I think that.
Oh, right there. I know they all look a little different, but the mouth wasn't quite like that. The ones my mom saw, they were very tall, very tall. They looked very similar to a gray extraterrestrial, but like more smooth and humanoid of sorts. And the skin, she described it as like blue electricity coming off the skin.
Wow. So
And
like
they
a
were
really vibrant kind of blue.
very slim, very tall. They had the big, typical gray alien eyes, but their skin appeared to be blue because she said there was like electric shimmer. Now she didn't mention but I'm sure there's a lot of different sources, species, and I'm sure there's blue skin is a reaction to atmosphere, oxygen levels, things of that nature. Okay. So I'm sure there's tons of planets throughout the universe that probably have this right chemical setting in their environment to cause so many different blue skinned creatures. Of course, there has to be. But the ones she saw, they were very smooth, very, very smooth, bulbous, long. They were very skinny, very humanoid looking, except for the big bulbous head and big eyes.
I would just point out too, and Kurt's bringing this up right here. So normally, what people refer to as the blues are this race that is often described as very short. Sometimes even people say that they're shorter than the small grays. That they look like midgets. They look like little monks with hoods. So I'm wondering if the blue beings that your mother had contact with might have been an entirely different race than what people generally refer to as the blues. I mean, she called them blues because they were blue, not because they, described themselves as, the blues or anything. So being that they were tall, that is inconsistent with how people describe the typically hooded blue beings.
They were never in hoods. No.
So I'm wondering if this was an entirely different. Some people have made mention of, and this is tenuous, I guess, Arcturian species, contacts with Arcturian species as beings that look like grays but are blue skinned.
Yeah.
Have similar eyes.
When I've shared this story, that's the species that a lot of people say that sounds like the blah blah blah. That sounds like, and especially going back to that, the messages they were giving her and the messages people talk about the Arcturians and all that, and how like spiritual and lovey-dovey they are, and this positive and like awakening and all that blah 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 wacko stuff. No, I'm just playing. I like to have fun. So, but a lot of people do say that it sounds more like that. But at the end of the day, my mom called them blues. So I don't know. She called the reptilian snakes. They could be from Alpha Draconis. They could be from Orion. They could be from Hollow Earth. Right.
Yeah.
I don't know. She called them what she saw. She was never given she was given information, but never like high detailed information about who these beings are, where they come from, their past history. It's like everything she was either being shown something or she was being used. Because, she would be with one species, they were taking her eggs and embryos. She would be with another species, and they're giving her words of wisdom and very. I don't know what it was with my mom, but there's something in her genetics that just makes her very useful for whatever's out there. Would be my guess. There has to be, because why would A be interested in her when B's interested? And see why are all these things talking to my mom? Why aren't they talking to everyone? Like what? I don't
It's still unknown
get it.
largely. We know that they follow lineages, but as far as why
No,
they
yeah.
select the people that they do, like still to this day, no patterns can be found with
Yeah.
that.
They do follow lineage, and we don't have enough
Mhm.
time for me to go over my genealogy records, but my family does have a Genesis book in the Scott Hall halls going back to 900 AD. So I'll leave
Sure.
it there and drop it there. So yeah, long history, and I'm one of the few lucky people that can actually read it. Not everyone has the privilege of being able to read their family history, because
Mhm.
it's absolutely amazing. One of my favorite things to study. Been studying it for years. It's really cool. But hey, at the end of the day, I'm me. I'm Robert Earl White. I'm not my ancestors. I am, but I'm not. I'm here to mess stuff up my way this time. They had their chance. It's my turn. That's the way I look at it. But yeah, it was a lot on my mom going through all this, but she did a really good job explaining. And as I was a kid, to never be afraid, she would explain things as you would to a child, nothing too intense. She didn't tell me about the hybrid stuff, that happened when I was 15 years old, and I saw one. My mother had her tubes tied to help stop with the bleeding I was telling you about from the constant bleeding. So she had her tubes tied thinking that would help. It didn't help. And she just kept on randomly miscarrying all the time, even when she wasn't
Mm,
sleeping with guys
mm,
and etc. And one day I heard her in the
mm.
bathroom bawling her eyes out for hours and hours and hours. And I go in there and it's in the toilet. And you want to talk about traumatic. And these are the stories I don't get into, but there
Mhm.
was a lot of
Mhm.
situations where I saw side effects from her experiences, but some of them are so graphic and so embarrassing. Things I wish I didn't see. It's embarrassing to talk about, because they're things that, a boy would never want to see his
Yeah.
mother in those kinds of positions.
Yeah,
Very tough.
so to
Yeah.
me, that's some of the stuff that's just the legitimate gripe of abductees. Like, you know, so much argument over, whether what they're doing, to their subjects is at all, harmful or is meant to be harmful. But, experiences like that, when you're having miscarriages, and things like that that's pretty coming close, at least, or not, if not way over the line of what we would consider in our society as, unethical behavior.
Yeah.
Even
But
if it's for,
yeah.
I mean, even if it's for, some kind of really benevolent purpose, like
Mhm.
saving the genome or something like that, that's still kind of,
Still, it's
yeah.
taking something from something. But honestly, to my mom, what was the worst? Not having anyone to talk to about this stuff, and the fear of being ridiculed and rejected. That's what killed
Mhm.
her. That's what drove her to drink. She also thought, and she said it somewhat worked, the more alcohol she had in her system, the hybrid abductions stopped happening. I guess because she's poisoning her body, and you can't use an embryo that's littered
Mm,
with poison, can
mm,
you? And that was her excuse. That started as her excuse. And then,
mhm,
of course, she became an alcoholic, because you start drinking to numb the pain of something. I've been down this road. I've been sober quite a while now. And, I started going down that road because of all this crazy stuff, and you're just trying to cover up one pain. And then eventually it doesn't become about the pain you were trying to cover up. It just becomes about feeling nothing. because it's easier to survive feeling nothing and trying to make yourself forget everything that you want to forget. Because to not be able to talk about something is so hard on you that you want to forget it. Now, if it was something that she had someone that or met someone that went through the same thing, but unfortunately, stuff like this didn't exist. And what you guys do, what we're doing with our channels and allowing people to share their experiences and connect with others, we're doing for others what my mother never had an option to do. I feel like if my mom would have had your community or any community, maybe she would have took a different path. Even these crazy spiritualistic communities are like, wow, wow, woo, meditate with us. Well, write books. Or I think that would have even been better for her than just keeping it all in and drinking herself to death. And that's what killed her.
Right. And you're absolutely right, Robert. The advent of social media, especially Facebook, let's be honest, Facebook is part of our lives now. And there is a group for everything. There's a lot of contactee groups out there that people can now join, and they can talk about their experience if that is what they want. Like your mom, she didn't have any of that kind of support system like there is now. So, talking about ghosts, the paranormal, UFOs, these things back then, you never wanted to say anything because, that's the padded room for you is where
it wasn't cool. It was not cool.
Right. And now people are more open to the thought of something like that actually happening. I mean, yes, they knew things were happening years and years and years ago, but it's more open, I believe, now than ever.
And there's a subculture now. There's a subculture that you can identify with, that you can be a member of, and have an identity as, which wasn't the case, in previous decades. And it's an acceptable, it's an accepted you can take the identity of that UFO guy, who's zany and crazy, and you fit into society still, there's a niche for that now,
and that's what makes social media, well, it's a double-edged sword, but that's what makes social media kind of good now compared to back in the day. I mean, even you, Robert, myself, Jim, we have the technology to make video logs, these vlogs that people do so that they can get stuff off of their chest. Even if it's for themselves, they can make a documented video of it because of our laptops with cameras and things like that. So yes, there's a lot more now than ever. You had to really trust somebody back in the day. And I think that was a major stopping point for a lot of people, just to bottle it up. And like you said, you could definitely drink that away.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And the messed up thing, she would eventually tell someone, like a friend she's had for 5 or 6 years that knows her character, been best friends, and she would finally open up. And when I saw people like that she's known forever and have no reason not to trust her, and she would really pour her heart out, and they just, that look, you're a crazy one. That look, the fix it up, the glasses, like, oh yeah. But yeah,
and you're right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, how many people, Jim and myself, we do this like why you do things, Robert, as well. We want to get you and your story, and we want others to hear it, because if that can help one person out there, then I've done my job.
Dude, that's what it's all about. Just one person. If I just get to help one person out there, I don't care about. I'm to the point. At first I wanted to be known for my UFO crash story because some stupid part of my brain thought having a UFO crash with evidence behind, which, boys, we are going to have to eventually do a part 2 because everything we talked about, that was just what was going on at our house. We didn't even talk about the actual UFO crash site and the removal of the debris and all that fun stuff and who was involved with the crash recovery and what they did in the area in the following day. So that will have to be a part 2. But
We'll do that.
yeah, it's been a journey. It's been a journey, and I'm very thankful you guys provide a platform for other people to be able to do this. I really, really appreciate it. I'm sure everyone does too. It's all about helping that one person, because like I said, I used to think having a UFO crash story with evidence behind it would be the most viral talking point around the world. When I first came into this community, I said, why won't I be heard? Now that it's been 4 years and I see the people that purposely ignore my story, even though I have more evidence than the stories they're telling. That's the thing. This sounds like a story. I have a substantial amount of evidence to back this crazy story, And when I say speculate, I make my points that I'm speculating. When I talk about my mother's abductions, I don't have evidence for that. I have experiences of that. She has experiences, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's 100,000% true, even though I believe it is. I try to stay with the facts. And the fact is, I had an unidentified flying object explode behind my house, and no major UFO researcher wants to hear my story. Doesn't it go back to the men in black who told my mom after the thing? They said, okay, tomorrow, all of these agencies are going to be coming here. My mom was thinking, how did they know it's me? I haven't gave my name to anyone. You want to know why? The men in black are the ones that tip off all your favorite UFO channels, all your favorite YouTubers, all your favorite trusted sources of conspiracy information that you think are telling the truth. It's all these guys. They control the narrative. When there's a UFO sighting, they tip off the Mutual UFO Network to follow their lame narrative of helicopter crash. Even though FAA was called, no helicopter was reported missing. No helicopter should have been flying there because of the nuclear zone, etc., etc., etc. Also, I have military transcripts. The aircraft did not belong to any of the military bases around this area. I have it all documented. Yet, so many big so-called UFO researchers don't want anything to do with my story because I think my evidence and my truth, I think it threatens their narratives because I'm exposing it. And this is why they cover my story, because I'm telling everyone the truth. Everything you've ever heard about UFOs, that narrative was given to you. Stop listening to people. Go outside, look up, and look within. That's it.
Yeah.
I know you have obligations, Robert. We can wrap this up quickly, but I would just suggest that the reason why they might not want, because right now, it's mainstream. Crash retrievals is kind of a mainstream topic, right? And you would think that
been
that
talking about it for 30 years. Yep.
That this wouldn't contradict the current narrative right now.
No.
However, though, there's an abduction aspect to this case, and I do not think they want the abduction testimonies and side of the UFO phenomenon to become mainstream, because within the abduction phenomenon, there's a lot of the, deep sort of elements of it that I think reveal things that they don't want revealed.
Nasty,
that go too deep. That go in, that get into the the spiritual,
and that
side
the government allows this to happen to my mother.
Right, like the
they allowed this to happen. So
Yeah.
national security, they can shove it up their ass. We don't have it. They allow my mother to suffer through this. So who was protecting my mother? Who was helping my mother? No, they just threatened her. They didn't even try to help her. The only person that really helped, Bud Hopkins and a few guys from Mutual UFO Network. Bud Hopkins tried to help her. What happened to him in his career? That's
Yeah.
it.
Well, also, we know that there's a huge disinformation campaign as well.
Mockingbird.
Yes. So, I mean, think about it. They don't want people to know anything.
Yeah.
And they're going to let people like us go ahead and tell other people's stories, and they're going to keep mixing it up.
Mhm.
So you're never going to know what is true and what isn't. But one thing they don't have is, like, you have the actual experience. You've seen what happened with this UFO. You've talked to your mom about all of this. So the detail and the memory that you have, they don't have that. So that is one thing that they cannot take from you.
Love it.
Mhm.
Well said, my man. And not just for me, that goes to everyone.
Everyone. Yes.
Anyone out there. Unfortunately, the most amazing experiences or worst experiences of your life happen at the most random moments. At those random moments, even currently, even though we didn't have cell phones back then, okay? But at these crazy moments, 9 times out of 10, we don't have a camera going. We don't have a professional setup. The craziest things I've ever seen, I was nowhere even near a cell phone, or they didn't exist at all, or I didn't have a camera because I was poor. So you have to rely off of what you experience, because at the end of the day, these things happen when you least expect them. And we also have to be careful not to give into too much into experiences without evidence, but to understand that experiences without evidence are still experiences, and it's
Yeah.
just as valuable, and even sometimes it holds up in court, right? Even
Especially
sometimes.
when everybody's reporting the same experiences,
Yes.
and there's a way
Then
to.
we're not so crazy, are we? Yeah. I like how that goes.
And
Yeah.
that's when the misinformation comes out, because they don't want people
Spoil
like
it for
you
us.
to say anything that's gonna, so yes, there has to be disinformation in there, because, well, you can't be telling the truth.
You can't
because
have everyone agreeing on the same thing, the same
Exactly.
truth. Have
Exactly.
them fight each other so the whole community falls apart.
Yes.
Which,
Well, Robert, we're not going to hold you. We know that
I
you have
appreciate it.
you have other obligations.
Oh yeah.
But we want to thank you so much for coming on and telling us this experience. It's an incredible story, and I'm so glad that you come on. And whenever we reach back out to you to do the part 2, if you can get your documents in order, we can show these, and people can see this stuff.
Yep. Well, just real quick, just to show you. Oh, this is all the evidence, all the articles.
Oh, wow.
I even have one article going back to 1876 of a blue light flying around in my area. 1876.
Wow.
These are all. You see how big it is?
Yes. That's incredible. And you have,
that's evidence.
Yes, over the years you've collected all this stuff to help validate your experience.
Yep.
And I love that. That is compelling.
And I waited until I had the evidence to share my story publicly. Everyone's so quick to get out there, get their fame. And that's why, like, sometimes I'm kind of harsh. I'm kind of passionate about it. Well,
Right.
Yeah, I've been waiting patiently, just like my mom said, which you saw me telling the story. I was not patient. It used to really get me angry, but I did it. I waited until I had the evidence, because I knew for a fact, because I watched my mom share it without evidence. I saw how people treated her. So I knew I had to keep my mouth shut. But I always made a promise to myself. If I ever found the evidence, I would go forward, and I would not stop sharing this story until the entire world knew, if I found the evidence.
Robert, what about a book? Did you ever think about taking all this information, putting it in a book?
Dude, books just aren't my thing, man.
I know, but you know what?
I read them. I love reading books, but
you have the perfect story.
It's too complex. My life, the things I've done, and I can't. I can talk it all through, but I don't know. And plus, it's like, yeah, buy my book. I know I would be that's when you become famous, when you have a book, but I don't care about your book. You know what's better than a freaking book? Me going outside every night and recording UFOs flying around. That's better than a book.
That is.
How about people just watch my YouTube channel and then screw my UFO crash story? Look at what I'm capturing now. You know, like, forget what happened 30 years ago. That's old news. I've processed it, moved on. I don't care about those. You know, I care about what's flying over my head right now. And, you know, there's a lot going on, and a lot of satellites. Off subject, though. But there's a lot of stuff. And just look up, everyone. You know, just look up. And I really appreciate it. Thanks again, guys.
Go over to Robert's YouTube channel, Robert Earl White, Order of Light. Also, go check out Anthony's page over there at Epic-New York. Well, it's NY.
Epic TV. Epic TV. NY.
Is it? Yeah, NY. I put the link in the description or in our comments. Check out what these guys are doing. They're on to something very big here, and I can't wait to see how this all evolves and go from there. But Robert, thank you again so much for coming on. We will be reaching back out to you to do a part 2 and just cover just a little bit more than we couldn't cover tonight. So, but thank you very much. Jim, anything you'd like to say in closing?
No, that's it. Yeah, we can wrap it up here, and we'll just do a part 2.
All right, perfect.
Here.
Perfect. All right. Thank you, Robert. Thank you, everyone, for commenting and joining in with us. We had a very good time. It was a blast. We hope to see everybody on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night. Thank you for tuning in with us tonight. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and follow to receive notifications when new content is made available. A Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure is looking to talk with ufologists, researchers, investigators, contactees, abductees, channelers, and more for upcoming shows. Or if you have stories, photos, videos, questions, suggestions, or comments, please contact us through Messenger or email us at paranomalypodcast@gmail.com. You can also visit us at paranomalypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. I thank you again for watching or listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure.